Welcome to the Inside Bristol podcast. My name's Andy Taylor, and there's a full house this week. Finally, we've got Stuart, Isaac and Kiwi to bring you the action, or the review of the action from this weekend, and look ahead towards the busy weekend that we've got in the contact football this coming weekend. Me and Isaac got off a call with Mike Davis last night, the head coach of the under-17s GB team. Great stuff. So hopefully we'll be able to get that out to you at some point. It could be before or after this pod, but it doesn't really matter because it'll come out at some point. So look out for that, and hopefully you'll enjoy that conversation. It was almost like a state of the program type conversation, wasn't it, Isaac? Which was awesome to have. So thanks to him. But we are here to review results and fixtures, aren't we? And see what that means for post-season football and stuff and alike, because we're heading quickly into that territory, aren't we? So let's get straight into it, because there was no Prem this week. There was GB, but then there wasn't GB for what we heard. So we will learn a bit more about that, and we'll keep you updated once we find out. So we did have Division 1 in action this week, and because there were so many, because the refs were able to concentrate on Division 1 and Division 2, no Prem, we had plenty of fixtures across both of those divisions. And so, Isaac, I'll give you first dibs here, being it being the northern fixtures and results. What stands out to you here? Because we did have an associate game. I should probably mention Glasgow faced the Rossendale Bucks in an associate game, 149-12. But there's some other results here. One in particular, a big shock.
Yeah, it's that Birmingham against Northants Knights game. Birmingham, we spoke about them last week. They haven't really shown us what they can do this year, and that if they really want to stay in Division 1, they need to start winning. And I don't know if they were listening, but they've clearly done something different this week, scoring 39 points, which is just remarkable for the season that they've had so far. So yeah, that really is the big shock for us, really, going into this after this weekend.
I think somebody said it. I don't know if I said it or somebody, or it's just in my memory, that I felt like that this was the make or break week for the Bulls, and they've made it, right. They live another week, but they take on and really romp home against the side that probably pre-season we would have been touting. I can't remember what your preview said, Isaac, but we might have been touting them for the division title. And although it's obviously still on far too early days, only 4 or 5 games left, 4 or 5 games played, 4 games left for Northants. That's a big slip up, isn't it? And not only 0 points, but also a worrying trend for them as well. Having won 2 and now lost 2 on the bounce. They've got to turn around quickly, because they've got a difficult fixture coming up this week as well, haven't they? Let's hope that they can bounce back. Stuart, anything else stand out for you within the North Division, or should we move on to the South?
No, I don't think so. We had Birmingham got off to a great start in that game. They got a pick 6 on the first drive. They had a 98-yard touchdown, we've been told. Jason, one of our sort of early partners in the UK AFS group, gave us a good rundown of this because of his involvement now with the Bulls. And it sounds like the Bulls just had one of those weeks where everything went right for them. And boy, were they due it, because they've not had much go right up to this point. And that division has completely been turned on its head. We had a couple of people message after the graphics went live. So I think that division is going to be one to keep our eyes on in the North.
Yeah, 100%. And Kiwi, there's still some struggles happening in Sheffield. Scunthorpe did what they needed to do, but there's probably a bit of surprise there with the Staff's Shropshire game as well. But
yeah, I was going to mention that one. I actually saw a comment that said it's the first time that they've beaten them since 2016.
Wow.
Courtesy of John Wise, friend of the podcast, noticed that he'd commented to say that it's the first time that they've beaten them since 2016. So, although looking at the table, it may not seem an upset as such with the way things are looking so far this season. Actually, when you put these two, quite local rivals together, obviously Shropshire have had the upper hand nearly 10 years. So, shout out to Staffordshire for getting out there and getting a win over them.
Yeah, the opposite of the Northampton Knights, right, where they're actually on a roll right now. You know, where not conceding much in a number of games now. What's that? They've played Northants twice and beat Shropshire as well, and came out 1-1 against Northants. So, you know, they're doing all right for themselves, aren't they? Interesting times in the NFC 1 Midlands, and one that will probably go down to the wire, unless we'll talk about a fixture a little later if that has some important knock-on effects going into the following weeks. Let's move quickly onto the South then, Stuart, because I'll give you first dibs here. There's I don't know. I felt that some of these results were less interesting than the northern ones, but I don't want to take it away from you. What stood out to you from these results in the South?
I think that's probably a fair comment, and that's not to sort of put the South under the North, metaphorically, graphically.
Yeah.
But it was nice to see South Wales Warriors score some points. They managed to get 38. That's about 30 more than they usually get. So fair play to them. Somerset again on the end of a shellacking. So I just sort of hope that they are, able to focus and turn that around. The Bristol-Bournemouth game was another humdinger. One that I originally posted the wrong way around and got corrected and posted the correct way around. So it was definitely Bristol that won this game. That's the difficulty when teams post the graphics with them always being the home team, even if they're travelling, because I read it as that score and then transpose it as that score and then think, okay, it's the other way around. My bad. East Kent Mavericks versus Kent Exiles. It was one that I picked out in my preview. It was one that didn't have referees. So one of the referees, who's actually a person who's been speaking to us about another programme previously, he reached out and said that the scoreline probably flattered the Mavs a little bit. They sort of... Kent kind of had a couple of issues. He said that they had a bad snap on punt. They had a separate fumble recovery that gave EKP. No, it didn't. It gave East Kent Mavericks, EKM, slightly different abbreviation, 2 very short fields of which they took full advantage of. And as soon as you go sort of 14 points down off 2 big turnovers, it's always you're fighting an uphill battle there, and if your offense doesn't put any points on the board, you're always going to struggle. So again, appreciate these sort of insights that people are sending us in, because we can then roll that onto the pod. We do it anonymously, unless you really want to say, this is me. Tell them that I've absolutely slated their program or absolutely praised their program. We'll completely do it anonymously. And then the one in the middle. Wembley Stallions just took care of business, didn't they? So they're sort of running away with that central division.
One game away now from division title.
Yeah, and potentially, really looking forward to that number 1 seed. Depends what South Wales Warriors and London Olympians have to say to it.
Yeah, 100%. That's a good review of the South, because if the reason why I say it's less interesting, because it felt like it went to plan. There wasn't really any surprises. You could argue that the Bristol-Bournemouth game was closer than probably would have been expected. But what we do know from Bournemouth is that since the beginning of last season, they've got better and better and better. And they had a really tough start to last year and then had a really good finish. And then they've brought that into the beginning of this season. Now they're 1-2 because they faced some very good teams to start their season. They've beaten the Somerset Wyverns, but then they've gone up against last year's division top 2 in South Wales and Bristol. So they're clearly not a bad side, and it'll be interesting to see how they get on. Now they've kind of got past these 2 very good teams. But yeah, no, that's a really good review. I don't think we need to drag that on anymore, do we, guys? Should we move on to Division 2 then? Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that, Stuart. Let's have a little look then at Division 2. Business as usual in the north there, Isaac, when it comes to your division that you know very well.
Yeah, pretty much. I think it's the squad I think everyone was expecting. Darlington, I don't know what's happened to them this last year, but they just don't look like the same squad as what they did last year. We're a side where they finished top of the table, only lost 1 game, and now it's completely
scored
different.
For fun. Yeah.
Exactly. And now it's Humber who've come down and, continued the same way that they were when they were in the division last time. But we have seen an improvement from Darlington from the last game. Last game they conceded 58 against the Humber Warhawks. Limiting them to 36 points is, I think, the lowest points total this year for the Humber Warhawks against all competition, which is still really good going. They're a very heavy run from the footage I've seen. A very run heavy team, just running different ways basically, and it was pretty much just business as usual for them.
Brilliant. Yeah, I suppose they've shown. Sorry, they've shown that they probably don't belong in Division 2, which is where probably these play-ins might help with these sort of conversations. But I won't open that kind of worms. And Stuart just obviously sent me a little note there to confirm that Humber did get the walkover against Doncaster last week. So they'll be disappointed not be able to continue that average point score that they were doing really well, which I know they mentioned to us, didn't they? But nonetheless, they now find themselves 5-0, and I make it that, depending on what happens against you and Gateshead, Isaac, could put them one win away from clinching that division as well. So we'll touch on that in a little while. Stuart, there was a surprise in the south, though, wasn't there? There was that SFC2 West division. Come on home.
You said that was the surprise. I was going to go with the East game.
I was all about the East game. I was all about the East game, if I'm honest.
Go ahead then.
We'll come on to the West.
Leave the West to me then. Talk about the East, you two.
Norwich Devils have already mentioned to us that they're in a bit of a transition and a rebuilding year, and then to come out and beat the Oxford Saints, I was a bit like, wow, okay, where's that come from? So, huge kudos, massive, fair play to Norwich. It looks like your rebuilding year is working. It looks like you've got your foot a couple of rungs up that ladder. Keep doing what you're doing, keep improving and get a couple more of these results sort of on the board. And then it, helps build your program for next year and the year after, with people seeing these results thinking, yeah, you know what, they are rebuilding, they're doing it well, that we'll transfer over to them, because the deadline day is coming up. It's fast approaching. I think it's June 3rd. I think I've seen on a few team socials. So I'm sure they'll be reaching out to a few people going, look, we've turned a corner. Feel free to, if you're not getting reps somewhere else, I'm not going to name any teams that are around them because that's harsh. But yeah, if they can be sliding into players' DMs going, deadline day is June the 3rd, come across. So yeah, congratulations to them. Sorry, Kiwi, if I stole all the words out of your mouth about that game.
Well, I was just going to, going into the weekend, winless versus, a team that hasn't lost each bookends of the table. This was not a result that I was expecting to see coming in here. And then it's like, they've got up and ultimately beaten the team that are on top, still on top, but, hadn't lost and they hadn't won. So, that's what you like to see, and I like to see upsets like this come through every now and again, because I think most people would say, on face value, it really is an upset from what we've seen, the first 3 games of the season in this division.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone can come back to us and correct me with my knowledge, but I wasn't overly surprised by it, if I'm honest. Oxford haven't dominated. They've won, but they haven't dominated. So I always wondered whether it was actually just going to be a close division anyway. It's almost like the way it started. It's reminded me of what the Sussex Berkshire, where a division was like last year. I think, what was it? Sussex, Berkshire, Cornwall and Swindon, was it? Or something like that in a division. And it felt like that. I suppose the SFT2 West is turning out that way as well, isn't it? Because I can't remember the last time I saw Cornwall Monarchs score 43 points, let alone be in a nearly 80-point game. So I was incredibly surprised by it. I had to double check with Stuart that he hadn't done a typo, that it wasn't supposed to be 4-3. But no, fantastic work there. I don't know what. Obviously, we don't get the luxury of knowing whether it's, Cornwall's offense was on fire, or Hereford didn't have a defense to travel with, or whether they just clicked and it was just one of those days for Cornwall. I'd be really interested to know how that went in there. But again, I think I said it a few weeks ago when Plymouth lost their first game. I would have been more surprised if Plymouth went perfect all year in their first season. I think they'll be disappointed with that. They have messaged us, haven't they, and told us that they've been hit by the injury bug, which is fair. They've got to recover. They're confident that they'll bounce back. But well done to Swindon, who have now on are they on a 2-game win streak or a 3-game win streak? 2-game. So they lost to Hereford a few weeks ago, and they've now got 2 wins on a run, and then they've got a bye week now, and then they travel to Cornwall. So interesting league where Swindon have played 5 games and a 600, and they sit on top of that division. So it'll be going down to the final week, no doubt, that division. So well done to those involved, and thank you for keeping it interesting. And no sort of running away with the divisions there, eh?
I will just say, if anybody from the Cornwall Monarchs are listening, not everybody at Inside Britball dislikes you. Tum called you out the other day about winning games. Andy's just called you out about scoring points. You're a long established. You're a long established team. You're a long established team. You do really well. Just keep doing what you're doing, guys, and we'll keep mentioning you in a positive mindset on the podcast.
Cornwall, let me know the last time you scored over 40 points, right? Correct me. Correct me. I'm happy to be corrected.
I was saying, at least you'll be the one getting the flack this week instead of me.
Very happy. Bearing in mind they scored 120 points all last season.
It's funny because Isaac sat down in the bottom corner going, "Where the hell's Cornwall?"
I've been once. I know just about what it is.
It was really far, and you've never gone back.
No, never again. Hopefully.
But let's move on quickly to the under-16s, because we had some interesting results that have ended up almost confirming some divisions, haven't they? So let's look straight into that, where we had the Paisley Bears hosted a division tournament there with EKP, Edinburgh and Highland. And some interesting results there, Isaac, isn't there? And I'm sure you can touch upon what this means for the division as well.
Yeah, so, first of all, to the Paisley Bears, it's a bit unfortunate for them that, they are an established team now in the under-16s level, and they just haven't worked out this year. But no, congratulations to EKP Pirates. Their 57-6 win over Edinburgh Napier Knights and 56-7 win over the Paisley Bears means that they now win the division. And they'll now go on to the finals day. But no, they had some really competitive games, it looks like. Well, not uncompetitive games, should I say, sorry. In this... in this weekend. Apart from that ball at the bottom, that Edinburgh Napier against Highland Wildcats game, about 58-26 in favour of the Edinburgh Napier Knights, it really shows what Edinburgh Napier can do, or maybe just how good EKP are. And to say they put 57 on them, only conceded 6. So I think EKP could be one of the ones to watch out on finals day for the 16s.
Yeah, so with only 2 games left, they can't be caught. They can finish with the same record as Edinburgh Napier if they win out and DKP lose out, which doesn't seem likely, but could still happen. But because they've beaten Edinburgh Napier twice, they can't be overtaken on head-to-head. So congratulations to EKP, but I'm pretty sure they'll be looking to make that a 100% record going into the postseason and get that seeding. EKP have only conceded 5 points a game, so that if they can keep that defense up, they'll be a high seed, won't they, going into these playoffs, which I've still got to get my head around, but we will bring you some postseason permutations in the next week or so. We will get there. We then move on very quickly to the Northwest, closer to you, Kiwi, hosted by the Chester Romans. We had a number of interesting games here. We had Lancashire Buccaneers took it to Chester Romans 35-27. Manchester Titans came out 2-0 beating Sheffield Giants and Lancs, and then Sheffield Giants and Chester came away with an absolute humdinger, nearly 100 points, 99 points scored there. Interesting results, but great to see some points getting put on the board there, isn't there, Kiwi? Because effectively that means that we've got a three-way horse in this division.
Yeah, and I think that's what's interesting about this is, despite these big score lines and that Manchester-Lancashire game going the way it did, you've still got Manchester and Lancashire sitting there in the table on the same win-loss record. So, it seems a bit more like tit for tat in this division, and still really, as you say, a three-horse race between Manchester, Lancashire, and Sheffield. Probably, I would say, an outside chance, but you never know. They've proven here that they can score points. So, like you say, a 99 score game, and I think I've mentioned this before in the Game of Fires. It can happen quite easily that you get these runaway touchdowns, but it does make it good to watch. And being an offensive player myself, I do enjoy seeing a good scoreline like that. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this pans out for the rest of the season, because I think on face value, Manchester obviously have put a reasonable point up against Lancashire this week, but I don't think you can count them out because they've proven that they've got the ability to score themselves. So, it's definitely an interesting one to keep an eye on for this division.
Yeah, if you're a coach at Chester, even though they're 0-4, that surely they'll be showing their players, you scored 26 points in tournament 1, and then you've done that in one game and then doubled it in the next game. I'm hopeful that they could get closer to a win than they have done. They'll just have to beat some stiff competition.
Yeah, and you look at that Chester-Lancashire score. It's not that big of a gap, right? Two scores. It's not a lot. So, it is winnable, and it's only a couple of plays going in off a different way that would overturn that scoreline. So, Chester should take heart that they're, yes, they lost, but, they didn't get, massively lose either of those two games. So, it's only small things and improvements that'll get them over the line and get those losses turning into wins.
The next tournament of this is early July, and there's a big game between the Buxton Titans, because that'll be tiebreaker territory for that game, going into who's going to be topping that division. So let's have a little look at the next division, which was in the northeast, closer to you, Isaac. And you've got some. You were very happy to see some of these results, weren't you, with your previous ties to the Assassins?
Yeah, definitely. And now with their 2 wins this weekend, it means that they've also clinched this division. A 50-6 win over the Lincolnshire Bombers, and then a 21-0 win over the Darlington Steam. It shows how good they've been this year, and that the Yorkshire Academy of old has now come back. It's great to see that for all the coaches and all the and all the staff down there. And then also that one at the bottom, Lincolnshire against Darlington. It looks like Darlington's had a really, really tough time this weekend. So hopefully they can bounce back and try and put points on the board next week, or win the next tournament. Sorry. Yeah,
it's kind of going the way it's gone all season, hasn't it? Which is Yorkshire 2-0, Lincolnshire 1-1, Darlington 0-6. So hopefully they can keep it going. Both of those programs to try and upset the apple cart in the next tournaments. And then we've got 2 more. We've got something further south. Berkshire Renegades hosted a few. Stuart, did we get any insight? Because we do sometimes get some comments from these programs, don't we?
We do. We know Oxford like to slide us a DM or two. One thing that we do know is that Rushmore have done what Rushmore always do, and have taken care of this division. They were crowned champions on socials the other day, and that's one of the most seen graphics we've produced this weekend. So it just shows what sort of ethos their program has in terms of sharing and eyes on and knowledge of a program. So congratulations to them on there. I mentioned the Oxford Saints. They have pointed out that in their next tournament, which I think might be this weekend, and we'll come on to that, there's between them and Solent, it's really, really close for that sort of second spot. Going to come down to points difference between them in the head-to-head at the moment. Oxford have a 4-point advantage, so they'll be looking to hold on to that. So again, we appreciate the reach out and the words, because they told us that before I knew it. So yeah, that's good to see. And then at the bottom, it's good to see Berkshire getting points on the board. They've had a bit of a start, so they've now got 30 and 20 in 2 games this weekend. So something's obviously clicking, getting their squad together, gelling, and hopefully in the next tournament they can get that elusive W on the board for them.
Yeah, no South Central this weekend, Stuart. Just to clarify that they're not until the July now. So it must be, you must have been thinking of something else there. Let's have a little look at the Southeast then. Hosted by the London Blitz. London Blitz came out 1-1. So they've been able to turn it around a little bit. They've got now 1-3. Started off the game 0-2. And then now we've got Kent waiting to see what they can take home. Hertfordshire Cheetahs are 5-1 with 2 good wins over Wembley Stallions 28-12 and the Ipswich Cardinals 34-18. And Ipswich came out 1-1, beating the Wembley the London Blitz as well 28-23. So that sets up an interesting last couple of tournaments. Certainly anything where Kent are facing Hertfordshire, that'll be tasty, because that's where the battle of the top of the division's coming from. Hertfordshire are just running out of games to be able to get that one over, so they'll need to take a game against Kent very seriously, which, just looking ahead to see if that is coming up. Yeah, that's coming up this weekend, which we'll touch on, taking away some words for later. So let's see how they get on going forward. So that's everything for under 16 as well. So we didn't have a whole lot going on in the contact world that last weekend. That changes slightly coming into this weekend. So guys, let's keep it brief. Let's pick out one game. Let's not talk about them all. Otherwise we'll be here for an hour, because we do see the return of the Premiership as well. So who wants to jump in first? Who wants to pick a game of the week that they're looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that Hertfordshire Cambridge game. Now, it doesn't seem like a really entertaining game on the face of it. The 2 bottom sides of the South, but these sides need to beat each other to stay in the division. It's as simple as that. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens this weekend, to see which one of them 2 is going to be the one that can, take the lead on the other.
Couldn't agree more. Anybody else jump in?
I'm going to pick the same game, but for completely the opposite reason. I think this is going to be a bit of a score fest. We haven't seen either of these offenses really produce, because they've come up against some, let's say, title-winning defenses, certainly against sort of the Aztecs and the Warriors, and the resurgent Blitz, as it seems. So I think we could see, some really points-hungry offenses this week looking to prove a point, and probably using Isaac's words as bulletin board material to go, you know what? Let's make this a 30-something game. So I'm looking forward to that one. And Caesars Titans, I'm 90% sure this is being live streamed. So I think keep your eye on that in the north, because that's going to be an interesting fixture.
Yeah, that's the one for me. Yeah, go on, Kiwi, jump in.
I was going to say, I'm not really picking a game as such, but I was just going to throw out there that anything that's happening in the north at the moment, I feel like you got to keep your eyes on, because there's just so much, and we've talked about it so many times, but I'm finding it really hard to call what's going to happen in any of these north games at the moment, because there's things constantly changing all of the time. So both of these north games for me are going to be interesting, because again, we still can't really tell how this is going to shake out at the end of the season. So, for me, all of these are kind of the interesting, these north games are where I'm like, yeah, whereas in the south, probably things are a little bit more clear cut. But yeah, the north still, I feel like every week I rock up and find a result out from the north, and I'm like, what? Like, I didn't see that coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am intrigued in this matchup of the Caesars versus Titans. Caesars are Caesars are 1-2. Manchester are 2-1. We know that Manchester have had a lot of explosive plays in both these very impressive wins against Newcastle and EKP in recent weeks. Caesars pride themselves on having a good defence. They certainly conceded next to nothing last year. It's gone obviously differently in their first year of Prem. What are they going to? Are they going to be able to contain that explosive game? And if they can they also contain that run game of Manchester, which, being on the opposite touchline for many years, Titans to see where the next counter's coming from, or where the next inside zone's coming from, or whatever it might be. It's difficult to do, especially with some of their silent snap counts. So I'm really intrigued to see whether this Caesars Titans is actually a closer game than what it has been for Titans in the last 2 weeks. Or are Titans just so quick and so explosive that they can just blow anybody out after their first game? So that's what I'm looking forward to.
The only thing for me is I'm like, which Manchester is turning up? Is it Manchester from game 1 or is it Manchester from game 2? We still don't know if game 1 was an anomaly and game 2 was how it should be, or if it's vice versa. Whereas this week we might actually see which Manchester are going to be here for the rest of the season. And that's the part where I'm like, what's going to happen, because if Manchester from week 1 show up, it could be a completely different. I say week 1, game 1. I know it wasn't.
I think I said that last week. I think I posed a rhetorical question, which was, does that show how good the Coventry Phoenix defense is, considering that Manchester Titans have scored 100 points in 2 games, but Phoenix kept them to next to nothing. I can't remember the score off the top of my head, but it was next to nothing. So again, we're early days. We're still trying to figure out what's going on, but Manchester, those wide receivers are quick, and they're utilizing it with the arm that their starting quarterback has. So brilliant stuff, guys. Let's move on to Division 1. We're in the North to start off with. Isaac, I'll give you first dibs here then. We've actually got a proper game up in Scotland as well, but is there any particular game you want to touch on here?
Yeah, I'll touch on that Scotland one. It seems like these two sides, they've been the battering ram for the Glasgow Tigers. So it'd be really, really good to see what these sides can produce when they go head to head, and see what the level is in Scotland when you've got two sides who are equally matched, and not got someone like the Glasgow Tigers who's going to blow everybody out of the water. So no, this week, I think, especially in the Prem and this division, we've got teams now that are going to be equally matched, and just be able to see what the level of football is like in the divisions.
I suppose see if Northants can bounce back is obviously an important point. I think I mentioned it earlier as well. Samwell could put themselves in a really strong position if they beat Northants, because then really their only competitor in the division then becomes Staff's Surge, who they handled quite nicely earlier in the season, didn't they? So it'll be very interesting to see how that turns out, whether Northants can rally up and change their fortunes. Do you have a little look in the south then? Stuart, where are you going here?
It's a really good question. It's a lot of fixtures that will, I think, separate a lot of divisions. I think we'll start to see teams getting the edges over sort of division rivals, I'll say. So like 2 versus 3 or 2 versus 4 and stuff like that. I think looking down them, Bristol will want to continue their sort of climb up that table. They probably didn't start as they'd want, but they're now sat at 2-2, and they'll want to be looking to gain ground on Solent, who they are actually playing. So they'll want to sort of leapfrog them in that division, and keep on the shirt tails. Shirt tails, is that the saying? Suit tails, whatever it is. Coattails. That's it. It's almost like your three-way horse earlier, and then Kiwi said 3-horse race, and I was like, that's the actual saying. But yeah, they'll be looking to chase down the South Wales Warriors. I just had this image of, you got the double-ended horse. I just had this image of a third-ended horse when you said a three-way horse. I was like, interesting. I digress. They'll be looking to stay.
That wasn't on the bingo card, Isaac, was it?
What, a three-way horse?
It really wasn't.
It really wasn't, was it?
Oh,
That's a tangent and a half.
Spanner in the works. But yeah, they'll be looking to chase down the South Wales Warriors in that game. So I think that's probably where my eyes will be drawn this weekend in Div 1 South.
Yeah. Anybody else got any particular fixtures that they want to talk about in the South?
No, I was just going to say, I don't know whether we've just decided this week that we're going to go with as many analogies, sayings. Wow, let's see how many people listening are probably like.
Cliche.
Yeah. Did they have some kind of offline challenge there this week to get as many of them as they could?
Stuart loves a cliche, doesn't he? But no, absolutely. I take your point, Stuart, because there's some interesting matchups where you see those partitions happen. Whether you look at the Central and see what's the difference between Portsmouth and Sussex and Berkshire and London Blitz. At the moment, it's next to nothing, but there might be a gap by the end of this week. So be very interested to see. Can Colchester keep it going? They're coming up against a stingy defence, aren't they? So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Colchester London Olympians, because they're on a roll. They could almost tie up the division by the end of this weekend as well if they host Colchester the right way. Let's have a little look on Division 2 then. Isaac, what stands out to you here other than the one you're playing in?
It's going to be if Lincoln's win last time out can be replicated against the Leicester Panthers, which is going to be a hard task for him to do anyways, because Leicester are that good. But we're good to see if Lincoln can carry on the way they have done against Lee, or if it's just Leicester are that good and then the rest of them just fight out amongst themselves. So I think that's really going to be a just a test of waters of where it could be this year for that division.
Got a dominant defense, haven't they? That Leicester Panthers. Somebody's going to have to score against them first before any sort of wins against them is going to happen, right? Because again, one of those teams that doesn't look like they do belong in Division 2 this year. Stuart, what about you?
I feel like going to Control C and Control V what I said for Division 1 South, for Division 2 South. We might see some of those partitions that you called them broken down again. Ouse Valley and Ipswich are kind of sat there in the middle of that Eastern Division at 2-2 each. One of them will be wanting to take the head-to-head for sure, and just sort of make sure that is them pretty much sewn in that number 2 seed in that division. And then exactly the same, Plymouth Hereford in the West. They're both sat in the middle at 2-2, and one of those will want to tie up the head-to-head, so they get the number 2 seed in the West. So both of those games have an awful lot riding on it, and you'll want to come out on the right side of that result for this weekend.
Yeah, I feel this.
And I think.
Sorry, go ahead, Kiri. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you can copy the pace the same for the as well, right? With the game that obviously Isaac knows best, but we got both teams sitting on 2-1, trying to get into that second spot. So, it's really for those positions in the table.
Yeah, 100%. I think your headset's playing up a little bit there, Kiwi. We'll keep rolling, but we obviously want to get your thoughts on NWFL. So if we need to pause and come back, we will. And speaking of the NWFL, Kiwi, we've got the champions hosting the Manchester Titans, and we've got the champions facing a team that are now 0-110 this season. What's your thoughts going into this game?
Look, I can't say anything other than I think it's going to be a tough game yet again for Manchester this week. I can't see them going into Birmingham and upsetting the apple cart and anything going any differently, unfortunately. Look, I hope, at least for Manchester, that they manage to get some points on the board, but we've seen just how good Birmingham are this year, especially with that win over London a couple of weeks ago. So, unfortunately for Manchester, I think it's going to be another tough day at the office this weekend. Yeah,
Birmingham have. So on paper, you've got a 2-0 team against an 0-2 team, but you've got a team who are 2-0 who have only scored 28 points and conceded 10. However, they faced 2 and 3 out of those two games, so they faced the most toughest opponents that they'll face this season, this regular season. So we'll see. We hope not. Hopefully there can be some tighter defense, some points scored, etc. But it's probably going to be a tough day out for Manchester. But let's hope it's not. Hopefully there's an upset. That'd be lovely, wouldn't it? So that's the Nines for sure.
Just
go on.
One thing to mention about that game: it's not being played at the University of Birmingham. It's being played at the University of Warwick. I was confused when I saw it on League Republic, but I've also just checked the Lions' social medias, and they have also advertised it as University of Warwick. So Cryfield Sports Pavilion, I think it is. They're playing there and not at University of Birmingham. So
right.
Don't turn up there because you will be disappointed.
Yeah, good point. Should we have a little look at the sevens then, Kiwi? Because we've got 2 tournaments. However, one is not so much of a tournament. Let's talk about the Kent Exiles hosting the Peterborough Royals and the Cardiff Valkyries. We've seen some of these results already, I think, if memory serves. Have we? Peterborough versus Cardiff, we've seen already 19-0 earlier on in the season. But we actually get to see Kent Exiles for the first time this season.
Yeah, and I think that'll be an interesting one to see. Obviously, Kent made it to the finals last year. They did relatively well, but we've seen how good Peterborough are, dropping down from having that experience of playing nines last year, and their squad growing and expanding. Obviously, they didn't have the squad size to stay in nines, but as we've seen from tournament 1, that they do have the experience and the ability to win. So for me, that's the game that I'm really looking at this week, is that Kent Peterborough game, because I think that'll say a lot about how this division is probably going to go. Right.
Yeah, and then we'll see whether Cardiff can close the gap, maybe learning something from last tournament, and then we'll have an idea of where Cardiff sit when they face Kent at some point in that tournament as well, won't we? So it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out, for sure. Then let's talk about the northern one, which is no longer a tournament, unfortunately. I double checked there wasn't any advertising for any changes in schedules as well, which I'm sure Stuart did as well. But obviously with the Caledonia Chaos pulling out of the season very late on, we must say, we can't understate that too well, can we? It really
sugarcoat it.
Yeah, sugarcoat it. It was absolutely very late on, but nonetheless, we do have one game. We have the Shield Maidens opening up their season against the Hertfordshire Cheetahs.
Yeah, and again, Hertfordshire are one of those teams that I'm looking at to see where they're going to stack up later in the season against Kent and Peterborough. What we're interestingly seeing here is, because they're all sitting in one sevens division as opposed to last year where we had the 2 divisions, it's quite hard to see at this point where all the teams are going to stack up against each other. So I think that'll be interesting to see Hertfordshire get into action and see where they end up. Newcastle obviously were new last year, did manage to get a win over, at least one win, if not maybe 2 wins over the Bears last year. So they've proven that they can get wins against teams that, have been around for a while. So they may be a bit of a dark horse, but I would expect this to probably go Hertfordshire's way. And then at the end of the season, we'll probably be looking at Hertfordshire, Peterborough, Kent, kind of in the top half of the table. So again, like I say, but you never know what's happened in the off season, like we saw with Caledonia, as we've just mentioned. Really strong season last year, expected to go up to nines, playing brilliantly, and then ultimately unable to fulfill the schedule. So especially in women's football, the turnover of players can be quite high season to season, and you've got to recruit well every year to keep your squad together. It's really hard to keep a full size squad year to year. So I think, although we say all of this about previous teams and how they were last season, I think arguably in women's football it's less relevant to an extent, because you can see a significant amount of turnover in the women's game, probably more so than you see in the men's, also by default of the squad size being smaller. So you lose 3-4 players to retirement, weddings, babies, all of those things. Suddenly your squad is completely different the following year than what it was before.
Just to jump in, Andy, you mentioned about like looking at duplicate schedules and stuff like that, I did reach out to competition committee because I saw the walkovers on League Republic, and I got confirmation that they did look at trying to rejig a couple of tournaments, a couple of teams traveling here and there, but it at such short notice. Wow, put my teeth back in. They just couldn't. So the consensus was that they would just award walkovers where teams were playing Caledonia. So it looks like that they will just take the 1-0 wins and roll on to see what happens at the end of schedule for playoffs for U17s. U17s for national sevens. U17s. It's because I've started editing that podcast that you were talking about earlier. That's where my my brain's gone off on a massive tangent there.
Yeah, fair dues. No, that's fair. And something I did notice when I was looking at trying to confirm those fixtures for Newcastle was that I did see they were all awarded 1-0 walkovers. So I suppose that means that the results will be what they are, but it might affect their opponents' postseason seedings if depending on what happens there. So brilliant stuff. That's a good weekend for NWFL coming up then, isn't there? So let's have a quick jaunt over to the under-19s, and we've got unfortunately a walkover there, Stuart. That surprised me when I was looking at this prepping for the pod. Is that something that we knew about in advance?
The only reason I know about it is that it's already on League Republic.
Okay.
So I've just copied and pasted that from there. If I'm really honest, I don't know any details about it. So if anybody,
That's
Swindon,
second,
I know that
isn't it?
Yeah, I know that we have spoken a couple of times in DM. So if you guys want to reach out and just say what your situation is, we can explain that. I'm sure Rushmore will be disappointed because they want to get out in the field and don't want to just take walkover wins. But yeah, it's an unfortunate circumstance. And I also believe that Sandwell are not travelling to Nottingham this weekend as well. One of their coaches, the Nottingham coaches that is, posted up in a coaches group on Facebook the other day saying that they're looking to host somebody because their game's not going ahead. And they actually spoke to me on Monday about, when do teams have to forfeit by? And I was just like, well, you can't put a stipulation on that, I don't think. I am 90% sure that the Caesars Sandwell game won't go ahead as well. But other than that, we've got a pretty chocker slate, right?
That's a shame, isn't it, Isaac? What stands out to you then in this slate? Because we already know that some of these divisions have been tied up already. It's obviously a shame to see some of these games not happening, but I suppose it is this exam time, isn't it? Which is always, I've been in BAFA conversations around these things before as a coach and as a volunteer, praying that they don't happen during this time because everybody's knee deep in exams, aren't they? So that is probably a bit of an issue here, but let's try and skip past that and think about what you're looking forward to seeing this week with this big slate of fixtures.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the Lancashire Buccaneers again as they travel to the Sheffield Giants. I think Sheffield, across all of their formats this year, have struggled, and it'd be really nice if they, can go back to the form they used to be because, I've had family members who have played for Sheffield Giants before, and it's really good to see their program, like how they develop players. It's really good to see. But also Lancashire Buccaneers are just a team that are just, we say it every week when we talk about them. They've got under-19 pedigree and they produce great players who go play for Filton and go play for the NFL Academy, and they've got a core group of lads that just know how to play and win. So we're really interested to see how they get on this week and see if they can get another win, against the Sheffield Giants team who look to be struggling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. We see the London Warriors for only the second time this year. Intrigued to see where they stack up against SLR. SLR obviously 0-2. Everybody seems to be getting beaten up by the London Blitz this year, which is a testament to their program. I'm interested to see where the division champs are. So the reigning division champs, London Warriors, where are they at? What are they going to bring to the table? So we see them for the second time. So I want to see where they're at, and are they going to be challengers for the London Blitz later in the season? That's what I'm intrigued to see. but plenty there, right? And we'll be able to break it all down next week once we've got some movement within the divisions. And then finally, but definitely not least, we've got some under-16s action, Isaac, as well. So probably slightly too further south for you because none of the North are involved. We've got the Northants Knights hosting Coventry Phoenix and Nuneaton Jaguars and the Birmingham Lions. So some interesting programs coming up against each other here.
Yeah, and for the Northants Knights, it's very simple. It's just win. Just make sure you win out. Go to undefeated season and look ahead to the playoffs, however they may look. For the other teams, you look at sides like Nuneaton. I remember when they were the Eton Jaguars, and they were playing at finals themselves. So it'd be really good to see if they can get a win on the board against Coventry or Northants Knights, and see if they can really upset the entire division really and get a win against the great Northants side. So it looks like, especially between the games between like Birmingham and Coventry, it looks more competitive than what it does do when you're looking at the side who has to go against the Northants Knights, who are just flying, on every level at the minute.
Well, Nuneaton have shown they're dangerous already, because the only loss that Birmingham Lions have got this season in their first 4 games have been against the Nuneaton Jaguars. So it'll be interesting to see what they can pick up here, isn't it? They're sitting there 1-1, and that's after beating the Birmingham Lions and losing to the Coventry Phoenix. So it'll be very interesting to reinforce your point about Nuneaton. They're there to upset the apple cart, aren't they, when this tournament comes along? Let's have a little look then at the Southeast, which is hosted by Hertfordshire. Hertfordshire, I have to correct that. But we've got London Blitz, Ipswich, and Kent at this tournament. What are you expecting here? Anyone jump in here to see? Because we've got a good divide there. We've talked about this earlier on with the results, didn't we? This Hertfordshire-Kent game is going to be the big one, isn't it, in this division? Stuart, have you had a little look at this? Because it's an interesting division nonetheless, but it feels like that fixture is huge, isn't it?
It is. We have seen Kent's fixtures this year, but I think everyone will be looking at that one to go, okay, let's, we need this one for, I think Hearts, where are we? Hearts have a 44-point swing to overturn. So they'll be really looking at that going, can we, shall we? Kent will just be wanting to stick around at the top. And as Isaac's already alluded, keep hold of that unbeaten season. They can take care of business this weekend. And I think almost put that division title on their backs.
We'll be crowning them for sure if they come away.
So the likes of Hearts and Ipswich and Blitz as well, to a point, will be wanting to look at getting that number 2 seed sort of in their grasp, so that they can look after their own business rather than having to look down the table over their shoulder at someone going, okay, we need to win this game, or we need them to lose that game. You hear that sort of around the soccer landscape a lot that's just finished, but they'll certainly be wanting to take matters into their own hands into that final tournament, which is weeks away. So they've got a few weeks to sort of sweat and toil over any results that come in this weekend, but they'll want to take it into that final tournament and have it in their own hands.
They're by far, like by a long shot, the number 1 seed in the southern half of under-16s. They haven't conceded a point. When you've got head-to-head, you're 4-0 without conceding a point in 4 games. Kent are the number 1 seed by far. And so Hertfordshire will just surely be looking to score against them, but Isaac's already talked about in many of these podcasts how much easier it is to score at under 16 and get high scores, and to not concede at all and have a 123 positive points differential. It's really impressive what Kent have done this year. And the likes of the reigning champs will be looking this way to see what's happening, won't they? And And finally, we've got the Southwest division, which is being hosted by the South Wales Warriors, and they've got Poole and Swindon heading that way. And we kind of know how this division's going at the moment, don't we? We've got Swindon sitting 4-0, we've got South Wales 2-2, and we've got Poole Dolphins 0-4. So all I ask for is an upset. Somebody go and upset it. Somebody go and beat Swindon, or somebody go and beat South Wales Warriors. That would be lovely, just to make it a little bit interesting. However, to put it as it is, Swindon are looking good, aren't they? And if I remember correctly, they were doing well last year as well, weren't they? I'm pretty sure they were finals bound last year, Swindon, with quite a potent offense, because I think they were with Rushmore last year in that division, if memory serves. So they're keeping it up, aren't they? Scoring over 100 points, conceding 37. But anyone got anything that they want to jump in with here? But it feels like it might just be as same.
I've got my eyes on that very first fixture, that Poole South Wales. From tournament 2, it was 12-14. Poole 12, South Wales 14. So I think if there's going to be, as you call it, an upset, I think Poole will be looking at it going, come on guys, we've got this. And then if they get that first win under their belt in that game, granted that Swindon is no easy pushover, but Poole also kept them to 27 points in tournament 2 as well. So, and 28 points, I think that is, if my eyes aren't too bad, in tournament 1. So, if Poole come out firing out the blocks, get that win and that confidence, what can they do to Swindon in game 2? Remains to be seen. So I think this will be one that I look at U16 level and go, okay, what's happened here?
Yeah, a nugget of positivity for sure to come out of the Southwest, because that's what we like, a little bit of chaos sometimes, because a little bit of chaos keeps everybody interested, doesn't it? But Swindon are doing a really good job in that division for sure. Anything that I've forgotten? Don't think we've forgotten anything, have we? We've done quite well with ourselves there, haven't we? Plenty to go on for sure. Like I mentioned earlier, we've just had a really nice catch up with Mike Davis. Me and Isaac jumped on there and got a state of the program type conversation. They've obviously had a recent announcement around their fixture that's coming up in July, and we talk about that and what opportunities that brings for that program. So please, when it drops, go out and find that. Probably next couple of days, I would have thought, because we'll try and get this out probably a bit sooner than the Mike Davis one, but it depends how our editing goes, I suppose. But nonetheless, really appreciate your time this week again, you guys. Packed weekend coming up of contact. We're looking forward to getting them out to you. Usual play, if you're listening and you're around a program, please send us the results. Makes our life so much easier, and I can go to bed a little bit earlier on a Sunday night. So yeah, that would be really good. But nonetheless, thank you very much to everybody that's joined. Thank you for those that are listening and watching, and we will absolutely catch you again next week to bring you the results and look ahead again to week 10 of the adult contact season. So unbelievable how quickly we're getting through this. So thank you very much once again. Catch you again next week.